The people that made Disney successful, the Imagineers that did the stuff at the parks, the creatives that made the movies what they are, they've largely moved on. A lot of them now work for Universal at the parks. A lot of them now work for Skydance and other places, other studios out there. They have left. So the talent pool is gone. Could Bob Iger fix that? Yes. But Bob Iger would have to do something that Bob Iger doesn't want to do. And that is Bob Iger is going to have to admit he screwed up and this was a bad decision. And he's not going to do that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll tell you about this one. I didn't get a chance to address this. Well, I think it happened Thursday. I think it was right after my Wednesday show. Doc Hollywood! For $199, a proper $199 out there. At this point, is Disney even capable of righting the ship? Or has all the DEI hiring destroyed that ability? Is Disney even worth saving? We've had those conversations before, but I'm happy to have them again for the new folks. So here's the deal, Doc. And it's a great way to tie it all together. They're all interconnected. At this point, yes, they're capable. Any company out there, I think, is capable of righting the ship. And to kind of give you an idea, I don't want to go too deep down the nerd tech weeds on this one, but Intel. Intel is a great example. You know, Intel, like the guys who make Pentium processors and all that. Intel has had an enormous amount of serious trouble the last several years. You know, they were once the biggest innovator, the biggest chip designer, the most advanced and successful microchip designer on earth, bar none. I mean, when you bought a computer in the 90s and into the 2000s and even to today, most of them still have Intel chips at them. But then something happened. They were getting caught up with and then surpassed by a company called TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor. And they were making all the chips for AMD and NVIDIA and Apple for their iPhones and their iPads. Intel was still making Apple's laptop chips. The problem was Intel was trying to then play catch up. TSMC was getting about 2 generations ahead in chip technology, which is massive. Okay, 2 generations is huge in those kind of things. Intel simply couldn't get their chip foundries to work. I'll put it that way. They just could not get them to work. So they were stuck continuously shoving in more cores into older chip technology, which made the chips consume more electricity and get even hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. They still haven't been able to fix all the problems, and TSMC is now 2 or 3 generations ahead. The point is that even Intel could correct it. But sometimes, just like Disney, the biggest kid on the block in a certain space, in a certain sector, sometimes they fall on hard times. But they can be fixed. Now, the question is, does Disney want to right the ship, Doc? That's the issue. Like, I can say unequivocally, Intel definitely has been trying to right the ship. And when it comes to chip manufacturing, that's not something you fix overnight. It takes years and years of retooling. That kind of stuff takes a hell of a long time to get fixed. And this is why you see more people using AMD chips and stuff like that. This is why Apple completely dumped Intel, because they were breaking the Apple laptops with bad Intel chips. And they had to move to their own silicon, which now TSMC produces all of. There's even been discussion out there in the last couple of years of Intel maybe having to not make their own chips anymore, or at least a good portion of them, and farm them out to TSMC like AMD and NVIDIA and Apple do to actually do the production. Will that happen? Time will tell. They're saying it might not. Would it be a good idea for Disney to farm out the production of their films? Would it be a good idea for Disney to take a hands-off approach and just say, yes, we have IP. We're going to design the chip. We're going to design, in this case, the movie or TV show. But we're going to let somebody else that's far more advanced, far more capable, and far more efficient financially at making this for us. They could. Are they going to do that? Probably not. They're too stubborn for it. So they'd have to want to actually change. And I'm not saying that Disney should farm that out, but look at what Warner Brothers does. Look at what Universal does. Warner Brothers doesn't own Legendary, but they contract with them constantly for Legendary to make really good movies for them, and they get to distribute them at Warner Brothers. Is Disney ever going to do something like that? Not really. I mean, with the exception of things like Avatar and Lightstorm with James Cameron. That's a different thing altogether. And Disney didn't voluntarily pick that up. They bought it with the Fox deal. The DEI hiring, has it destroyed the ability? I think in large part, yes. But if you look at the same time, the leadership at Disney is still Bob Iger. It's still on him. Bob Iger can turn around tomorrow, put his finger on a button, and say, change. He could. He is the man that brought all of the DEI garbage into Disney. He is the man that is largely responsible for taking the Walt Disney Company and pointing it down the road of diversity, equity, and inclusion at the expense of the actual quality of the final product. That is inarguable. It's totally inarguable. Anytime that you put quality and merit second place to simply hiring people for no other reason than look a certain way, come from a certain place and all this, you're going to get what you're going to get with Disney. And you're also going to have all of the original talent that Disney had leave, which most of them have. The people that made Disney successful, the Imagineers that did the stuff at the parks, the creatives that made the movies what they are, they've largely moved on. A lot of them now work for Universal at the parks. A lot of them now work for Skydance and other places, other studios out there. They have left. So the talent pool is gone. Could Bob Iger fix that? Yes. But Bob Iger would have to do something that Bob Iger doesn't want to do. And that is Bob Iger is going to have to admit he screwed up and this was a bad decision. And he's not going to do that. At least not in my lifetime, I don't think. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to be proven wrong next week, but I don't think that's going to happen.
What do you think is going to happen next week, Valiant?
I think we're going to get an earnings call in about a week.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. How's that going to go?
I don't think it's going to go that great. Is Disney worth saving? To Doc's last question, sure. They've got an incredible legacy. They have a wonderful story behind them of 100 years. It should be saved. But like I said, many years ago when I started YouTube, let's celebrate the stuff that's working, that they're doing right, because the only way to get that message across is for them to see things like this weekend with the rise of or the Revenge of the Sith, the re-release of that, and how well that did. Extremely well for a movie like that. And somebody at Disney has got to be sitting there thinking, we got to do something. And hopefully Wall Street sees that and realizes that. That's the key. But I'm going to keep pounding away at it. Look, if I didn't think that Disney could be turned around or we couldn't see some improvement at some point from Disney, I wouldn't be doing the things that I do here on YouTube. I do them here because I do want to see some actual improvement. A lot of people out there think that, you guys on YouTube, what's going to happen if Disney suddenly gets better? You're not going to be YouTubers anymore. I seriously doubt that.
We could actually cover happy things. We could cover happy Star Wars content again. Oh my Lord, can you even imagine, Valiant?
I know. It's incredible.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.